Hi there, and welcome to Chapter 1, Criminal Justice Today. Today we're going to be talking really about what the basis of crime is. What is crime? And so we can see here on this first slide that crime is defined as an act that violates criminal law and is punishable by criminal sanctions. Now, that can mean a lot of different things. Criminal sanctions doesn't just necessarily have to mean jail. It could be probation or fines or community service. And we'll learn a lot about those things this quarter. So society decides which acts are criminal by using the consensus model and the conflict model. So the term consensus refers to general agreement among the majority of any particular group. And therefore, the consensus model really rests on this assumption that as people gather together to form a society, its members will naturally share similar norms and values. So when individuals' actions deviate from those values, that's when the well-being of that society is threatened, and so therefore there's some sort of sanction that must happen. The consensus model really assumes that this diverse group of people have similar morals. And morals, of course, are the principles of right and wrong behavior. And so we know that most of the individuals, the diverse group of individuals in this society, have some same beliefs about what morally is right or wrong. And so this is definitely an interesting, but really an important thing if we're really breaking down what is crime and how is it sanctioned. Oops, let's go back here. So next is the conflict model, and the conflict model is a criminal model in which the content of criminal law is determined by groups that hold economic, political, and social power. And according to this conflict model, the most politically powerful segments of society, which is going to be based on your class, income, age, race, are the ones that have the most influence on criminal laws. And therefore, they're able to impose values onto the rest of society. So personally, I think that the conflict model is a huge driver for what is legal, not legal, how people are sanctioned. And we're going to get more into that. But I can say, having worked in this area, in many different varying areas, it definitely seems like the more powerful are driving legislation and the court system. We'll see that more as we move through this course. So if we're considering both these models, the text constructs a definition that is going to be useful for you guys. So based on this, the definition that we want to use is that that a crime is an action or activity that basically is punishable under criminal law, and it's determined by the majority. Sometimes the powerful minority, but not necessarily. So we know that this offense, O-F-F-E-N-S-E, it can often be an offense against society. Okay, so let me repeat that to make sure that's clear. So this crime is an offense against society as a whole, that's prosecuted by public officials, not by the victims. So there's victims of crime, but the prosecution, which represents basically society as a whole, is who is going to be handling that offense. That's going to make a lot more sense as we move on. So at this point, it's really important to understand the difference between crime and deviance. If you've taken a sociology class, you have learned about deviance. And really, when we're talking about deviance, we're talking about acts that don't conform to what society believes is correct. There is a difference. It's really, when we're talking about deviance, we're talking more about a subjective concept. So deviant acts become crimes when society, through legislature, makes some decisions as to which of those acts should be punished. So, as in the situation today in the United States, certain drugs, right? Certain drugs are seen as maybe being deviant, but it's not actively seen as a crime. And that's just an example. Okay, so types of crimes. It's important to understand how crimes are classified. And for general purposes, criminal behavior can be grouped into some different types of crimes. So first, let's look at, let me look here. I'm using a new software, so first we're looking at violent crime. So violent crime is going to be more about those major categories of crime. Let's get through these. So I think it breaks it down a little more. Good. So we're looking at murder, unlawful killing of a human being. Sexual assault or rape refers to coerced actions of a sexual nature. Assault and battery is really two separate acts that cover different situations. So with battery, we're talking about when one person physically attacks another through threats. And then when we're talking about assault, we're talking about when harm is actually done to the victim. And robbery is the taking of funds, property, any other article of value from one person with a means of force or fear. So when we're talking about like the crime of armed robbery, we know that it's done armed with a weapon of some sort. So forceful taking of property or money or any article of any value with some sort of force. Now, with property crimes, there are three major forms of property crimes. And we're going to look at these. So larceny, burglary, and arson. Arson is also considered a property crime. But although arson is very different, obviously, than larceny or burglary. A lot of people get larceny and burglary mixed up. So take a minute and look at what those differences are as you move through your notes and your slides with what these are. And of course, motor vehicle theft we know is, taking a motor vehicle, right? GTA, Grand Theft Auto, not the video game. So we talk about that with the differences, a different classification when you're stealing a vehicle. Okay, so public order crimes are behaviors that have been labeled criminal because it's contrary to shared social values, customs, and norms. Okay, so this is kind of talking a little bit about that. Those models that we were talking about before. So today, the most common public order crime is public drunkenness, prostitution, gambling, and illicit drug use. So you don't necessarily have a victim. We might be talking like with public drunkenness. There's no real victim, although there's many victims to any crime when we're talking about it from a sociological level. But as far as there being a victim, as in an assault case, it's going to be different with public order crimes. Now, white collar crime is usually nonviolent crimes, and it's going to be committed by business entities or individuals to gain some sort of personal or business advantage. So white collar crimes involve the use of legal businesses and legitimate employees that are committing illegal acts. Organized crime oftentimes will get grouped in with white collar crimes, and organized crimes are illegal organizations. So we might call, a lot of people think of, when we're thinking of organized crime, they're thinking of the Hells Angels and other type gangs or the mafia. We're talking about organized crime. So there's some organization around whatever that crime is. It's an interesting area of criminal research, organized crime. So cybercrime is obviously the use of cyber technology, the internet, 3.6 billion users worldwide, and that's of course when these lectures were created, which this was updated in 2019. So I'm sure that grows, especially in the times of so many of us being on our computers so much more than in the past. So we're going to talk about what this criminal justice system is and what is the purpose of it. So the criminal justice system is an interlocking network of law enforcement agencies, law enforcement, courts, and corrections. Okay? Criminal justice system, law enforcement agencies, so that is the police, the courts, and corrections institutions. So anytime we're just saying criminal justice system, we're not talking just about police. We're not talking just about prisons. We're talking about the system as a whole. So the criminal justice system is really designed to do two things: enforce criminal laws and protect the society from criminal behavior. So when you are thinking about this system, which remember is law enforcement, courts, and corrections, we're thinking about how each of those pieces can accomplish the enforcement of laws and the protection of society from criminal behavior. Justice, the term justice, is a really difficult concept to define, and it can be challenging. So challenging to meet when we say we want justice for all. But really, if we're broadly stating it, justice means that all individuals are equal before the law and that they're free from arbitrary arrest or seizure as defined by the law. So a lot of people would argue that our justice system doesn't work. I would probably be one of those. But so it's important to understand this concept. So of course we're maintaining justice. That's one of our biggest goals, is maintaining justice. We're also protecting society. So we're protecting them from future crimes. We also want to, of course, determine when a crime has been committed and what is the appropriate sanction for that crime. And then we need to do some rehabilitation. So we need to rehabilitate the ones that are committing crimes and protect the crime victims. We're going to stop now for our first lecture, and we'll be starting the next portion of it shortly.